Alrighty, tubers. Got a fun one for you here today. It is a World War II military generator built in 1944. It is an E-3, if I remember right. It's an E3 or an S3. We'll find that tag here in a little bit. Really neat old generator. These weigh these weigh a lot. They weigh like 750 pounds. This is why I picked it up in the trailer that it's currently in. This is why it's currently still in this trailer as we're working on it. It's a little wet down the radiator there, which is good. Yep, still a little wet. I mean, something's in there still. It smells like antifreeze too. Hopefully there's still a good amount of antifreeze in there. We'll definitely add more. I wish I could find a new radiator cap, because that one's a little wonky. It's got one of the tabs rusted off, as you can see there. Might be able to just weld that up and fix it though. Weld a little piece on there, contour it to make it fit the same as the other. See if we can make it work. Using a different camera today. Hopefully it's working out good for you guys. It's on a gimbal, or it is a gimbal. Fire extinguisher inside here. There should be one right there, as you can see. We'll probably find one to fit there eventually, just in case. As you can see here, it is a crank generator or crank engine. You have to crank it over by hand. Oh, looks like it pulls out to make it easier to handle, maybe. Kind of neat. It did come with the original crank handle. Somebody's painted it with a primer gray. The original crank handle. Somebody's painted it with a primer gray. I'd imagine it was originally khaki. Excuse the mess in the background. This is a storage trailer for future projects, or projects that are in the works. So if you see anything in the background, it's either in storage or it's an upcoming project or previous project. There's the engine. I went ahead off camera, made a mixture of Marvel Mystery Oil and diesel, poured it in each cylinder, because this generator has been sitting about 30 years. Bought it from the previous owner's son. The generator was used, I'm guessing, for like a house backup, or just to generate power for when power was lost. This plug is hardwired into it. I'll show where that is plugged into. There's your distributor. I haven't really turned it over much. I wanted to make sure the cylinders were soaked and lubricated before I really turned it over, so I didn't do any damage to the engine. It's got a little 11 horsepower 4-cylinder engine on it. You can see the carburetor there. This is a beautiful, very original unit. I've seen a couple of these, I think 1 or 2 on YouTube, a couple more online, and one of the 2 on YouTube was pretty heavily modified to replace the carburetor and so on. But there's some white chalky stuff around this. My best guess is that's going to be asbestos. That's what asbestos looks like. So we're not going to bother with that or really touch it or do much with it. We're just going to leave it alone, and it will leave us alone. You can see the governor set up there, connected to the carburetor. So yeah, pretty neat. Let's go ahead and pull this out a little bit further so we can get some better light, get around it a little easier, and open up the other panels, see what's in them. Alright, now that we've got it out a little bit further, pull these panels up and see what's inside. You can see the back side of the control panel there. All the gauges. Looks like we got an extra belt. Let's see what's inside this little toolbox. Extra old belt. Custom built piece of metal for something. Obviously you're not going to chuck it or anything. Got to make sure to keep everything around. Looks like a pair of clamping pliers. Ones that you can like clamp down on and like, oh, well these ones, I don't know what these are for. Almost look like ones that you could pinch off a hose with and it would just stay pinched off, but I'm not sure what those are. They're got no teeth in them either, they're smooth. That's what made me think that in the first place. Got some stuff in bags. I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of this out and we'll look at it. Alright, so what was inside that box surprised the heck out of me. These are brand new from 1944, I'd imagine. Got a distributor cap, it looks like. Whether it's for this engine, well, here's the distributor. It's a little different, so I'm not sure what that's to. You can see there's some couplings here, between here and here, and there are some brand new couplings in this bag with some brushes for the generator head, brand new. This one had brushes of a smaller size. Looks like some Clover brand valve, maybe a valve lapping compound. One side's fine, and the other side is coarse. Can open it. That's my best guess. There's brand new parts, absolutely doused in Cosmoline. It's one of the original spark plugs. It's no longer used. It uses a traditional style spark plug now. Rather amazing that all the parts are in this box and they all come with it. Kind of cool. Kind of a fun find. Don't know if I had mentioned it before, but this generator is made by O'Keefe and Merritt. See it right there on the tag. It's a 3,000 kilowatt. I'm not sure if you can see all the info there. This is where the wire is running and hardwired to the generator head. I guess hardwired is not necessarily the right word. Where it's wired up to the generator head. Got a light bulb inside here. Looks like it's meant for maybe take it out of the little stand it's sitting in, maybe move it around, or maybe it's just for lighting up this area. Again, here's the engine. There's your engine information. ZXB. Haven't checked the oil on this yet. Going to need an oil change before it's really ran much. It's full, but it's relatively clean. It's actually kind of the shade that I like to see. It's like used, but I like to see used oil in stuff, because when I see brand new clean oil, it makes me weary that they're trying to hide something. There's some dirt on that. I'm going to go wipe that off before I stick it back in there. Alright, that's better. Wiped it all off. Don't need to introduce any dirt into the engine. I believe it's got an oil filter. I believe that's what that guy is. A lot of these old engines don't have oil filters, so that's what I'm going to guess this guy is. Won't know until we open it up. I ain't going to open that up until I can maybe find a replacement first. Don't need to open up that can of worms. Let's see, what does that guy say? I can't really see that one very well. Useman something shaft craft. I don't know. Again, somebody just messily sprayed everything down in gray primer, and I'm going to guess it's when they took this thing from military service to service, civilian service. Here's more info. Yep, it's an E-3, 3,000 kilowatt, which is crazy to think that this big old thing is just a 3,000 watt. Here's your control panel. It's in gorgeous shape. Again, ones I see online and even in a museum online, their control panel doesn't look quite this nice. You got your main breaker on and off. It's a fun sound. Got your voltage control, panel light, voltage regulator on and off, ignition on and off. It's currently in the on position. Panel light. And I don't know if panel light is behind the gauges or if we're talking about this guy right here. It very well could be that bulb. Looks like it's got 1,286 hours on it. Okay, oil pressure gauge, your frequency gauge, engine temperature, AC amp, AC volts, voltage regulator, and voltage control. Not sure what the difference is. Maybe one's a little finer than another. So neat though. Somebody's got an adapter plug plugged in right here, and then a light bulb plug. Just a light bulb socket. Plugs straight in. I'd imagine this does 120 volts only. Just seeing all the plugs across it, wondering if those are different legs of the generator head. If you can get a 220 off of this thing, or if they're all plugged into the same and all you got is 110. They got like 3 different kinds of plugs. I'm guessing those are probably military style, and then civilian style for the World War II times, 1944. Pretty neat. This thing is pretty cool. On top here we've got, looks like a fuel gauge. It's a fuel tank. So we fill it up. Let's give it a whiff, shall we? Oh yeah. It's been about that long. I don't think that guy was was lying. Might end up taking this fuel tank off and just cleaning it out before we really try anything. I did notice the fuel shutoff in the bottom is actually in the off position. There might be a chance we may not even need to pull the carburetor apart on this to clean it. If it was put away correctly, and that is to shut your fuel off and let it run out of fuel to shut it off, which again, the ignition plug back there, or the ignition switch, was in the on position, which really gives me hope that this was shut off and run until it was out of fuel. There's a chance that we may not even have to pull the carburetor apart on this to get it running. But before we do that, I want to make sure that fuel tank is clean. Now we've already opened this door. There's the carburetor right there. It looks like it is just gravity fed. Goes from there into a tube, into a filter, and over. So, air filter down below. The air filter looks pretty nasty actually. There's a chance we don't need to pull that off, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Little radiator up in there, pretty neat. Now you can see where that belt is used. The belt that's on there looks pretty new, looks like it's in good shape. What a neat old thing. like the firing order is 1, 2, 4, 5. No, 5. That's a 3. I was like 5. No, he's not a 5-cylinder. It's a 4-cylinder. 1, 2, 4, 3. Alrighty. Well, like I said earlier, I put some Marvel and diesel in those cylinders to help free up stuck rings if it's got any. Again, it's been sitting 30 years, so I really wanted to make sure it was lubricated with something that was going to unstick old sticky rancid oil. Let's go ahead and turn it over here, see if it does. I turned it over just a smidge when I picked it up, just to make sure it wasn't stuck. I mean, I was expecting it to be, but see that missing the magneto with the clicking sound. Now let's see. You think it's got any spark? I'd imagine it's got points and condensers that'll need to be cleaned. See if we got any spark in those sparks. So, oh, there was a spark. There's no freaking way. Maybe sparking the other ones right now. And so I was 1, 2, 4, 3. So that was 2. Probably just spark those 2. I'm gonna guess it's gonna spark that one next. Watch real close. Oh yeah. And the one behind it. Yep. Isn't that cool? It's got ignition. And the switch is still in the on position, so how flippin' cool is that? I'll be interested to see if this thing produces power now and starts and runs. Noticing some cut wires here. Maybe went to something that sat right there. Maybe it was specifically military. Maybe it was for radio suppression, because that's what the original spark plugs that go on these do. They actually suppress the spark and make it so it doesn't interfere with radios. Maybe that's what that piece there was as well. I'm not sure. Hopefully it's nothing important, because it doesn't have it. I have no idea where the heck I would get it either. I think the next thing to do is to get some antifreeze and put some antifreeze in the radiator. Take that fuel tank off of there, flush it out, and try to get this thing running for the first time in who knows how long. The guy that I picked it up from, the gentleman that owned it, was his dad, and the last time he knew of it being run or used was 30 years ago. The smell of the fuel in the fuel tank supports that, because it smells really old. So let's call it 30 years. So it's sitting for 30 years and it still has good ignition, good spark. Let's go after that fuel tank next. Alright, so more on the engine. This is a Hercules ZXB. Model numbers again are inside there. This seems to be, I just looked up a little bit on it. Seems to be a bypass style oil filter, so it doesn't run all the oil through. It just takes a sample, runs it through, filters it, and back into the block, which is just fine. Usually filters a little better that way. Anyways, it seems that this is not standard equipment. The distributor cap we saw earlier, it seems like that is standard equipment. That is for when they put these on tractors and used them for civilian type things. They used that style of distributor, like a regular style distributor, but it seems military grade, military type uses this style. I might be wrong. but that's what it seems, and I'm wondering if that's also why this has good ignition after sitting 30 years, because it is a magneto, not a distributor. It makes its own spark and sends that off. They usually seem to be a little more trustworthy. That's why they use them in airplanes. So, kind of interesting. Looks like they're, I don't know what that is, maybe a cap to put oil in, but then there's another spot for oil. So, definitely got to do some research on this still. That actually doesn't look like a cap for oil. That almost looks like a cap for antifreeze, because that looks like a water pump to me. Yeah, that looks like a water pump to me. So, know very little about this engine other than what I am able to research online. Let's take that gas tank off. Switching over to the fisheye lens on my cell phone. A little different audio, different video. This is already loose, so I'm just going to loosen it up all the way. Take it off by hand. I noticed the tank was loose when we were doing the video earlier, so whoop. Well, I just lost that little washer. I know where it went. It went down there, so I'll find it. Let's see. Gonna need to take this. It comes nice and dry in there. Again, that's what I like to see. A little bit of something in there coming off the end. Sometimes those valves aren't the best or the most perfect thing in the world, so sometimes they still allow fuel past. There's the fuel tank. Fuel tank is off now. I'm going to put this guy back. Let me see if I can find that washer. Alrighty, I found the washer. Gonna get that, put that back right where it came from. It's the best way to not lose your nuts and bolts. Just like that. Put it back into place. A couple threads. Definitely going to replace the fuel line and fuel filter. Get all that guy replaced. It's just fun to like look at the back of that rheostat. All the wires and cords and all sorts of things. Try not to look at it too hard though, it's gonna hurt my head. There is some of the original khaki green right there. So this was originally painted that khaki green. I wonder if there's a whole bunch more of it. Look at that. What a neat color. It's too bad that there's not a way I could take that paint off and just leave the old original khaki green underneath it, but that is honestly really not bad. A little bit of rust you can see right there in orange, but I think that's going to clean up really easy. It looks like this gauge is threaded on, so we might be able to break that loose and take that gauge out of there and then really go to town and clean out the inside of that tank. But really, that is not as bad as I was expecting for sitting for 30 years. Though, you gotta remember, 30 years ago, we did not have ethanol fuels. Ethanol fuels attract and pull in moisture, cause havoc. Kind of interesting. Alright, I'm removing the clamps here to remove the old fuel line to inspect and replace. And these work really well for these type of band clamps. Like, really well. I think we figured out what these are for. Say Toro on them. Is that the same as the lawnmower company? I mean, they build much more than just lawnmowers, snowblowers, all sorts of different things. But I just trying to remove the fuel line here. All right, just get this guy off of here. Doesn't look too bad. Looks pretty dry. No gobbledygooks in there. Looks like it might be dry. I don't know where all of this garbage came from. looks nasty, but I'm going to ignore it for now and hope the inside of the carburetor doesn't look like that. I did notice though that this guy doesn't want to move. It may not without the engine running. I don't know if it's the carburetor that's stuck, not allowing it to move. No, that moves. Okay, there we go. It's just a really, really strong spring. You have to pull this way. So that's not even stuck. So that works. Very interesting. Let's go find a replacement for this. Alrighty, so we got the fuel tank pretty well cleaned out. I ended up using some carburetor soak, stuff that you put your carburetor in, leave it for a couple hours or overnight, come back to it, clean it out. Stuff works great. Ended up using some on this, poured it in the tank and let it sit for a while. It worked pretty good. I'd say it's about 80% cleaner. There's still some stuff in there, but it's taking care of all the loose stuff. Unfortunately, one of the cleaners I used to clean it or flush it out ended up melting the fuel gauge on it, so it's no longer readable. It's really, really bumming out. I didn't think it would just dissolve like that, but it did. Ended up going with a clear fuel filter for now, just so I can watch any impurities or anything coming through that shouldn't be. Kind of keep an eye on the tank and the carburetor. It's not a pressurized fuel system, so a clear plastic is just fine, I figure. So it's a 7/16 on the backside. Yes, it is. Nice and tight. That ain't going nowhere. There's some felt pads that go around this as well. Anti-vibration, I'm guessing. And then this guy will go in there like so. And I cleaned that up as much as I could as well. Here's the new fuel line. Already got the fuel hoses put on the fuel filter. And that plastic fuel filter works great because one side of the fuel system is real small. I don't know what size that is exactly. And the other side's real big. Well, these plastic filters have an adapter kind of built onto them. So I'm not using the original or the clamps that came on it. We're going to use some worm clamps. This being in 1944, they had leaded fuel back then, so it will need a lead additive in the fuel. Lead was an octane booster, but also an additive to actually lubricate valve seats. And in today's fuel, they don't have it because they were found that it was causing brain damage in little ones, so they took it out. So I found some, just whatever I could find at the store at the time, additive octane booster. It boosts octane, but it's also a lead additive, so it does have what it needs to in the fuel. We've also got some B12 chem tool already in the gas that we're going to be pouring in this. About half a can is what we need. And pouring in the fuel. This is ethanol free. No ethanol is a good thing, especially on anything carbureted. If it's got a carburetor, don't use ethanol unless you're going to use it 24/7 all the time. And even then, you're going to have issues eventually. I'm going to call it there. It's about 2.5 gallons. Approximately about 2 gallons maybe. There we go. Fuel gauge is moving now. All right, make sure we're still recording. Make sure the audio's still good. Yep, we're still recording. Audio's still working. I'm gonna move you over just a little bit because I think that we are going to go for a start here. See if we can get it to crank. Rather, see if we can get it to start. So many people that get those words mixed up. Cranking or turning over means that the engine is moving. Starting is starting. I see so many people online like, oh yeah, I can get it to start, but I can't get it to crank, or I don't know. It's just infuriating a little bit. It's kind of fun to deal with people sometimes. Got no fuel flow just yet. That might be because the fuel tank or the carburetor isn't taking anything on. I'm gonna try pressurizing the tank by blowing into it. Don't do this at home, kids. I'm gonna go ahead and try for it. I'm gonna turn over a little bit, see what happens. Where did I put the crank? There it is. I'm gonna go full choke on it. All right. So choke is currently on. What is that? 9/16. Nope, larger than. 5/8. Yep, 5/8, and it's loose. It's actually loose, so maybe it's a good thing we're taking a look at this. Well, weird. Oh, you know what? It's got tons of Marvel Mystery Oil and diesel in it. When I put that in the cylinders, it backflowed in through the intake and filled the carburetor up. The carburetor's full of Marvel and diesel. I was like, what the heck? Why is that in there? Let's see if we can capture some of it. Just said it, just pouring it out. I was gonna say, the stuff coming out's really old fuel. Wait, why does that smell like Marvel? I know why. Pull that off. Doesn't look too bad. It's been soldered in a spot, and it is an old style cork float. The cork floats, you have to have ethanol free fuel. If you use ethanol with an old cork float, you'll actually destroy the cork. Ethanol will eat the cork very quickly. That carburetor looks really clean though, which is good news. And that radiator did have antifreeze in it, which is also really great news. Check on everything. Yep. Looks like the camera's happy. I'm also going to put some Marvel in the oil, just because this engine's been sitting a very long time and I'm sure there's varnish and stuff in there. Oh, I saw where that fell. I'm gonna put a little bit in here. It's probably enough for now. Waking this engine up for the first time in a long time. Just want to make sure it's done right. 30 years is 30 years will give you such a crick in the neck. Ain't that movie, except I changed it around a little bit. I'll try spraying up directly through the bottom. See if there's a jet in there. Gotta be something in there, right? There you go. That is definitely going into the carburetor there. This thing's gonna smoke like none other when I get it started for the first time, because it's got Marvel Mystery Oil all in the cylinders and in the intake and everywhere. So this thing's really gonna let loose. Just taking a quick look at this one more time. I don't think there's a jet built into this. There's just a funny hole in the middle of it. That again to me screams old Tecumseh carburetor. All right, let's go ahead and piece it back together. It's together and it's tight. We're going to open the fuel line again, see if we see flow. Yep, we see some flow. All right, let's check the camera one more time. Let's go for another start. Yep, camera's going, microphone's working. Let's go for another one. It's gonna puke all this smoke right in my face if this thing starts. Might also help if I double check and make sure the ignition is in the on position. It is. Circuit breaker's off. Okay. Oh, that's a kickback. That's a little kickback there. There's some smoke. Smoke means ignition. Check the spark plugs, make sure we haven't fouled them out with oil. These are just finger tight, and I am out of shape. Not fouled out, dirty, so we're going to go ahead and spray them. We're also going to push the choke in so it's open. Clean and dry the spark plugs. A little extra something down the cylinders. Double check the camera again. I'm a little camera shy, because sometimes the microphone decides to stop working or it stops recording for whatever reason. had it running for a little bit. Started to play around with that rheostat on the back side. Just wiping it back and forth to try to get it to clean itself up. Nothing really was happening. It was producing just a little bit of power. You can see that light in the back lighting up just a little bit. Decided to grab that old vintage Kirby vacuum. It's from 1955 or 54. Plugged it in and saw the beater bar slowly turning. No light on, just beater bar slowly turning. I sat there and played with it back and forth, and I think having a larger draw from the generator helped out, because all of a sudden it started speeding up and it'd slow down, speeding up and slowing down as I was moving it back and forth. And then suddenly it came to life and was putting out like 135 watts to the vacuum, which it's not going to hurt it. If anything, it's going to pop the bulb, and it didn't. But ended up sitting there tuning it just right. I need to clean that rheostat off to get a better fine tune out of it, but it's actually producing power now. It's up to temperature now. I ought to drain the oil while it's still hot. I ran it out of fuel just the way it was left. That's what I've always done with my generators anyways. Just because you leave it empty, you leave the carburetor with no fuel in it, you're not going to cause any damage. You're not going to cause any issues from happening from having an empty carburetor. So always just emptied the carburetor out and just called it good. Just looking at the oil here, and it looks like there's a valve, and it looks like the oil is green. That could be really old fuel too. Ow. I just touched that really hot exhaust. That's actually a lot quieter than I was expecting it to be. That part that looks like it has asbestos on it, that must be a muffler, because it's really not as loud as I was expecting it to be. So, pretty happy about that. I might still make up an exhaust system of some sort to fit off of here or something. So, it wouldn't be original, but if I could quiet it down just a little bit more, I'd be happy with that, you know. Just trying to find, there we go. Trying to find a wrench that'll fit this valve on the opposite side. Let me bring you guys in and show you what I'm doing here. In there, it looks like there's a valve connected to a couple other things in there. Just gonna see if we can open this guy up, and I'm going to guess oil just comes out of here. Kind of a crazy design for 1944. If it works. It's open. Got nothing coming out. Open up the oil cap, maybe? I'm starting some maintenance and forgetting to make videos. Got the oil filter open here, and you can see all that nasty sludge. Look at that. There's some nasty thick stuff down there in the bottom. Currently siphoning it out, trying to get out as much as I can before I put a new filter on, if I can find a new filter. Here's the old filter, currently sitting in a oil bottle. Looks like a really fine particulate filter. When I look online, I really can't find those filters anymore. They don't exist anymore, so yeah, just trying to drain out all the garbage out of this. It's going. It's coming along. Definitely think I'm going to put a little bit of a brake cleaner or something in here to soften up the garbage that's in here, and then I'll siphon the rest of it off. Alrighty, so I got the bottom all cleaned out. I actually put some more Marvel Mixture oil down in there. I actually left a little bit in the bottom, left it for a day, came back, stirred it up. It actually cleaned up all the crap out of there pretty well. I need to wipe the cap of this off. I looked around, went on the Wix website, as well as asked some guys on the Facebook page, and they all pointed me to this filter here. It's a little smaller in diameter. Got the same height, but this guy is supposed to be the replacement to be used. Looks like it fits. So that'll be our new oil filter there. I'm going to wipe the top of this off. I might pre-fill slightly. Not that it matters. I don't know. Might pre-fill, may not. But I'm going to get this all cleaned up. I'm going to get this guy put back on, and then we're going to fill it up with 15W40 diesel oil. Reason why I'm using diesel oil: one, it's a low revving engine, so you're not going to have foaming properties. Diesel oil really doesn't have anti-foaming properties as much as like automotive oil. Gas engine oil, I should say. And it also has a higher zinc content, which really anything, especially this oil, needs a really good high zinc content. Looking at the manual for this engine, I do have a manual for it now. It says anywhere from a 20 weight up to a 40 weight, depending on if it's like dead of winter, they say 20 weight, straight 20. Or if it is very, very hot, then a straight 40 weight. I figured a 15 while it's cold to a 40 weight. I think this is going to match what this engine needs really well. So I'm going to go ahead, get this cleaned off, and then get it put back on to the generator. And that, like I said, that looks like, so this middle part right here pokes out just a little bit. It's got a spring on it, and this guy is just almost right at the level, just slightly below. I think that's poking out far enough at the bottom to where it will work. I was also going to look, because this came with a new gasket. Looks like that gasket might, yeah, looks like the gasket will actually fit, so that looks like the right one for this generator. I'm not going to put that gasket on just yet. This one doesn't leak, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Already screwing that down a little bit. You can see a little contact, so I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, that's nice and tight. Then we put oil in it. I'm actually not sure how much oil this takes. It doesn't say in the manual that I have for it. Now, it's not a manual for the generator, it's a manual for the ZXB engine. And these came in many different flavors for many different reasons. Military spec. You had them on tractors. I believe they put them in smaller vehicles. I'm not 100% sure exactly all the things that they used them for, but they used them for a lot of different things. And there was like two or three different styles of ignition, 2 or 3 different styles of oil filter. I think there's 2 different styles. You either didn't have one, you had a canister style like this, or you had a spin-on. There's 3 different, I guess that's 3. One being non-oil filter. So there's lots of different flavors. So I'm going to try to siphon just a little bit whatever is left in the oil. I've been using the siphon on the oil as well to really help suck out anything that's in there. So let's go ahead and pull out the rest of whatever we can. Build a suction on the system until it doesn't want to anymore. It's got a pretty good suction on it now. Alright. Then the box end of a 9/16. Again, there's even different styles of oil drain on these engines. Start cracking it open. I'm sure it'll pull out just a little more. Things settle. Yeah. Pretty well empty. You can see how dark that oil is. How dark that oil is there. And that is after already changing the oil once. I let it run the first time with the original oil and sludge in it just to get it hot. I drained that oil out, or tried to, then ended up using the siphon to get the rest of it out. I put some mystery random oil that has no label to it. You see, it says gasoline engines. That's as much as I know about it. So I put that stuff in there, started it up again with some Marvel mystery oil to help dissolve some of the garbage. Went ahead and started it up, got it up to temperature, and then drained it out again, and that's what's coming out now. So I figured that's good enough. With a new filter, as much oil as we can get out of there, and I'll sludge out of here. We're gonna go ahead and move on with getting the rest of everything out of here, which we just did. And then we're going to fill it up with some diesel oil. Alrighty. We've got down to, what is that, quarts? What is that measurement? Liters? We're about, yeah, we're almost down to 2 quarts there. Quarts on the left side, liters on the right. We started with the line right there, made a line. So whatever that comes out to, it's about half a quart there. So that'd be what? 1, 2, 2.5 quarts, something like that. 3 quarts. Got a little overfilled, but doing the oil change on this already, I already know that it's going to need a little over. I don't know if you can see that or not. Anyways, looks like it's about half a quart overfilled. That's because this filter still needs to fill up. Once I start it, let it run for a minute, shut it off again, this should be right on where it needs to be. So what it says in the manual is to start it and check the oil after running or something like that to be able to fill up the oil filters. Let's go ahead and put this guy back on. It's going to have nice, fresh, clean oil. I've got the spark plugs also tightened down like they're supposed to be. There's that oil filter number. It's a 1080, or from Wicks or O'Reilly's, it would be a 51080. Napa filters are made by Wicks, so it's the same thing. There's the old filter. I'm going to go ahead and go for another startup here, and we'll let it run for a bit. Alrighty, got you guys propped up there. Close this down, turn the fuel on. Pinch my fingers, because you know it's a step that you gotta do. Hard time opening this up last time. For some reason, when you close it down, the fuel petcock doesn't want to reopen. We got fuel flow going. Let's go ahead and pull the choke. Make sure the ignition is on. It is. And install the crank and crank it up. Being careful not to break your wrist. It'll pop, push the choke back in. It's to prime it. funny sound I can hear. Let's go ahead and check the oil. It's filled that oil filter up all the way now. Oil that's in this is looking kind of dark again, but it might still be just the oil that's in the drain tube. That's what I'm seeing. Look at that oil. It's right on the dot. Let's see if we can see that there. Yep. Right there on the dot, right where it's supposed to be. So I am very happy with that. This thing sounds awesome. Runs great. Ignition's back on. Go for another start. all of my generators. After I'm done running them, I always run them out of fuel. New or old for this matter. This is my oldest generator I own, 1944. But I always run them out of fuel. That's how this was actually kept when we first got it running. When I first started looking at it, that fuel was shut off, and I think that's really what saved the carburetor and made it easy to get it running again. I did have to, off camera, one of the days I came down here and ran it to drain the oil out again. The fuel, the carburetor did start to spill over. All I had to do is pull it apart, pull the needle out, flush stuff out of here, clean the needle up, put it back together, and it hasn't leaked since. But I always run them out so there's no fuel just sitting in the bottom of the carburetor. If I'm able to, at least. If it's got a fuel shut off, always shut that off and let that shut your engine off. Just keep in mind, if you do have a electric start after it shuts itself off, go ahead and make sure to make sure the key is off. This doesn't have an electric start, so it doesn't matter if I leave that ignition turned on or not. I think that's going to conclude this video, guys. You can hear in the background I had a little air compressor back there plugged in. It draws a lot of power, so I had that heater plugged in. Plugged the little heater in for a minute. That's 400 or 500 watts. I think that's 1500 watts. Not sure what the wattage is or amperage is on this guy, but it's 5 amps. I think it's 5.3 amps. It says on the bottom. I'm remembering now as I'm talking about it, but I think that's going to conclude this video. If you guys want to see anything else on this, or maybe you guys have one and need a closer look at the wiring on it or whatnot, this guy's definitely going to stick around for a while. Might be a permanent fixture. Never know. Depends on if they go for a lot of money or not. But really, I love old military surplus. I love generators. And World War II history is pretty interesting too. This ticks all those boxes. So I'd love to strip off this paint and get it back to its original khaki color. You can see a little bit right there peeking through. I'm going to do some research on how to strip paint without stripping multiple layers all at once, like layer at a time. See if there's any way I could strip that back down to the original khaki color. That'd be way too cool. There's a khaki in here. There's a little bit of khaki right there too. They did a dang good job painting this thing up though back in the day. They painted everywhere. It's interesting when they would take things from military use to civilian use. They paint them most of the time. I've got an old World War I or World War II. That might be my oldest generator. It was a 6-volt generator meant for airplanes, from what I was told, or equipment. There's an old video up on that. I still have it. I'll post it up here somewhere, or you'll see it down in the description. That was a pretty cool little single-cylinder Briggs & Stratton, 6-volt, from what I was told, little generator. But this is my oldest generator, not alternator, but generator. But anyways, I'll see you guys later. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked it, please consider subscribing, and please smash that like button. Doesn't cost you a thing, helps the channel and this video out a whole ton. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later.